Welcome to Anyone Have a Pencil. Today, my guest is Stephen Ross, business owner and leader and innovator of Renovating Kansas City. Stephen, welcome.
What's up, buddy? How are you?
Doing great, man. How's it going in old Missouri?
You know, it's we've been getting some really nice weather. It's been like mid 70s, low 80s.
Yeah.
And we got a few weeks before that where it was in the mid to upper 90s where everything kind of melted. So now we're just kind of enjoying this odd lull of temperature here. So it's going well. How about you guys?
I love that. Good weather is always good for construction. We're actually having the opposite, man. I've got a couple projects that are delayed right now because of rain throughout Texas. Mm. So that's on kind of some, El Nino. I'll blame it on that.
Nice.
Well, good, but
climate change, climate change.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll try to make it up somewhere else.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to introduce you. I mean, Stephen is a friend, and I think oddly enough, he and I both started having kids at the same time.
Yeah.
So kind of tell everybody like what your journey has been up until that point. How you got into real estate and what your background is.
Yeah, I'll kind of give you the 20,000 foot views. Yeah, so our wives actually, kind of grew up best friends. And I met my wife, it would have been back in 2010, 2011. And, was still in school, played college baseball, so kind of traveled the country, got a free education, which was nice. I'm glad it was not expensive to get a college education for myself because it wouldn't have been worth it. I don't use hardly anything about it. But got into real estate in college. My brother, who's a couple years older, we started buying a bunch of rental properties when they were kind of just giving them away. My brother went to Kansas State University in Manhattan, Kansas. So he bought a house there, got a huge tax credit, rented it to his buddies. So not only did he get a house essentially for free, but they were covering his mortgage plus, and the light bulb went off in the two of us. And we were like, this is it, right? This is how
you guys were doing house hacking before it was a hack.
Exactly. Yeah. We were definitely not the OG house hackers, but we got into it before it was cool.
Okay.
So graduated school, got several just kind of BS sales jobs, just working my way through, trying to collect a paycheck. I was just trying to make any money to do anything to buy more real estate. So from 2012 through 2015, we were trying to buy 3 or 4 properties per year. Got married to my wife, Kelsey, in 2015. And then really kind of turned on the gas in the real estate world. So I got my home inspector's license in 2015, got my real estate license in 2017. And then from 2015 to 2020, 2022, we flipped about 50 houses here in the Johnson County area on the Kansas side, where we live now. And that was kind of it. We were flipping and selling one and then taking that profit and then flipping and keeping the next for a long-term rental. And we just rinse and repeat and did this over and over and over for several years. But yeah, that's kind of the background of it. We got into, the construction side of it in that time period. We were just subcontracting out to random people. And then we were finally like, we can do this ourselves. We met, our partner now, the third partner, myself, my brother, and his name is Chris Dirks of Renovating KC. And so we launched Renovating KC, and COVID hit. Everyone went home, worked from home, and they started spending an absorbent amount of money on their house. So we caught that wave. In Johnson County, where we live, COVID didn't financially impact too many people here. So they were going home. Rates were cheap. They were giving away money for free, and everybody was pulling out 6 figures to spend on their basement or their exterior space or something like that. So couldn't have capitalized on the construction side any better kind of when COVID hit.
Yeah, it was like a home improvement boom.
Yeah.
In addition. So backing up a little bit, I mean, had you and your brother had any experience flipping houses or in construction prior to you guys flipping your first house?
No, we had no experience. My dad, he's an engineer, one of the most intelligent people that I know, he kind of helped us. He grew up in that time period where they just learned how to do things with their hands. So he wanted to pass that to us. But no, we had no experience. We had no business buying a house. We didn't hardly have any money to even buy the first house. And we did everything wrong out of the gate. But that's the only way to learn, right?
Yeah. So walk me through your first deal. What's that look like? What goes wrong? What do you learn from it?
Yeah. So what really went wrong is we tried to do it ourselves, and we tried to do the construction ourselves nights.
Everyone's first mistake.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like we didn't hire a professional was mistake number one. And we just tore this 100-year-old house apart and tried to put it back together with no money, no time to do it. We were both either still in school or working a full-time job. Ironically enough, we still own that property today. We've owned it now for 16 years. It cash flows incredibly. The asset has appreciated over double in value. And on top of that, it's been cash flowing every single month for 16 years. So, what seemed to be a huge mistake at the time turned out fine.
Yeah, it's incredible what happens if you give it enough time and distance.
Yeah, for sure. That's what a lot of people, they want to hit it quick, and they want to, the old adage of getting rich quick through real estate is it certainly can happen, but in my approach to it, it's much more of a long-term game, right? Absolutely. We're not flipping these houses over month. We want to invest in them for years and just let the appreciation run wild.
Yeah. And I think one thing people miss out too in real estate as well is that they have a couple deals, go really well. That's almost like the worst thing that can happen to you is you think that your margin should be that high, for the next 20 years. And, for guys like us, you and I have been through, a couple up and down cycles in the real estate market. Mm-hmm. It's really about longevity and being able to continue to be competitive and to perform in a down market. Not just, hey, everyone's jumping in, the water's warm, everyone becomes a real estate developer or a real estate agent or a loan officer, when money's free. And then next thing you know, turn the page, they're all looking for jobs as baristas.
Yeah. The funniest analogy I have to that is for my 21st birthday, my dad took me to the casino, and the worst thing ever happened. I won a bunch of money. And I can see it on his face. He's like, oh, damn, like this wasn't supposed to happen like this. Like I was only playing with like $100, but I ended up walking out of there with like $300 or $400. And it's very equatable, right, to real estate. Like you can't assume. So many of my friends in the real estate world will buy a house, they'll flip it, they'll make a good profit on the very first one. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is so easy. They oversight on the second house. They don't do their numbers correctly. They think they're professional. And then on the second house, they tank.
Right.
It's like, you've got to earn your stripes. You've got to take time to get through the down times, like you're saying, to make the good times happen. It's not a guarantee every time.
Yeah. So what, hits the light switch for you where you and your brother say, hey, we have a business? Like, when does it go from, because you were working, right, as in sales, getting your licenses, but that doesn't mean you have a business overnight. So what was the real catalyst there between, hey, this is something I can do to make some extra money, and hey, we have a real business here? Yeah.
I would say that day happened when we managed all of the rental properties ourselves. And I can't remember the exact year. It was probably right around 2015, 2016. But on the first of the month, all the checks, the physical checks got sent to my house. We didn't have any online payment platform set up. And I was sitting there unpackaging about 40 checks. And I'm just like, this isn't it. Like, we did it. I think we finally get to a point where let's hire a property manager. Let's get a QuickBooks account started. Like, this is a legit business at this point. And so for me, it was kind of like finally clicked when I started to see the amount of money that was coming in per month. And it was like, we got to start stashing. We got to start treating this like it's a real business.
Is that cash flow just from rental revenue, or is that from flipping, mixing a few flips in there too?
At that point, it was when we were just our rental portfolio. From there, we hadn't even really started. I mean, right at 2015, kind of started flipping a little bit more aggressively. At that point, same thing. We hit the first 2 or 3 flips that we did went pretty well, and same thing. It's like, what do I do with this tax liability that I didn't learn anything about in school?
Right.
How do I figure out how to run this company with the profit that we're getting? So then we started to engage tax professionals, legal professionals, those kinds of things. That's when we finally realized, this is a real business.
So using 1031 exchange or setting up something else?
We didn't. The advice I got from an accountant years ago, and I should probably do my own research on this, but his advice was taxes are never going to be lower than they are today. Mm-hmm. And you're a business owner, right, Stephen? Your income is never going to be less than it is today. So, we weren't flipping large commercial projects where there was millions of dollars of tax liability on the table. We were flipping $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 houses with a 10, 15%, margin on it. So it's like, we just paid the taxes and we just moved on.
Gotcha. So you funded the dry powder of your business with post-tax dollars.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. We decided it was best not to kick the can. We've certainly sold some that had a significant profit where it was like, okay, maybe we should look at what that process entails. But I'm more of a, let's get it out of the way now. They're going to take it at some point, but might as well just get it over with now. Right.
We couldn't be more opposite of that matter. Yeah. I'm like, I'm never paying a tax.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it.
My kids will inherit all of the property and it'll be their tax problem.
It'll be their problem. Exactly.
Yeah. So that's crazy. So the episode I did before this one, I had one of my property managers on who manages, I think we're up to close to 300 doors right now under management.
Wow.
And he, just talking about the property management side of things. And I think, it sounds like you hired a property manager, but then you were managing property prior to transferring that over, right, to someone to manage those. And I think that's another thing that a lot of investors miss the point, is that the biggest asset, like if you have a time horizon on owning this property like you did for 15, 20 years, your biggest asset is your tenant. Qualifying the right tenant, avoiding any undue maintenance or vacancy expenses on that property. How do you qualify tenants, and what does your property manager bring to the table that you've seen in your experience of like, hey, this is the right way to do it?
Yeah. So the first, we'll call it phase one of rental property investment, was in Manhattan, Kansas. So the majority of it was student living. Okay. And that in and of itself is great because the vacancy is essentially zero. We bought homes that were in walking distance to the university, walking distance to Aggieville, which is where all the bar scene is. So, we would rent our homes in January, February, March for the following August. And we would be at 100% rented by March.
And you're getting a personal guarantee by the parents for the most time. Right?
Exactly. And in most instances, we would make the student sign as well as a co-sign from their parent. When we transitioned that to a property manager, we did the right thing and we hired a local property manager that 90% of his book of business, his rentals that he managed, was for student living. So he understood the game, because that's kind of a unique demographic, the students. When we transitioned to like 2015, 2016 to buying here in Kansas City, I kind of started over. I handed off the Manhattan properties to professional management, and then I started managing the ones here in Kansas City. And then eventually, I want to say it was like 2018, 2019, I handed that portfolio off to a manager, and I've been with her ever since. And she's fantastic. She does everything from the leasing to the tenant background checks, the rent collection. She has her whole set of vendors that she uses for everything. So honestly, I'm 99% hands off. We have a threshold that she has to get approval from me on, for repairs, but it's just getting higher and higher because I trust what she's doing. So she's been great, worth her weight in gold. She doesn't charge enough, in my opinion. And I've told her that. I'm like, you need to be charging more. And even though I'm the one paying, like, you do such a great job.
Yeah, it's good that you have that situation. I think, the other area that investors can get in trouble too, and I've probably said this 1,000 times, is like, you're picking up pennies in front of a steamroller by arguing with your property manager to go out there, $50, $75 maintenance call to make sure that things are in order, because your biggest liability is that you piss off your tenant, right?
Right.
And the more personable you are to your tenant, the more they take responsibility for the asset that you're entrusting them with, essentially.
Right.
And they're not going to, if they don't move out, they stay in that property for, 5 years. What's that worth?
Yeah.
I mean, do the math on that. I mean, that's probably worth $20,000 in principal reduction on your loan.
Yeah.
If I'm guessing, plus the cash flow. And you're going to argue about a $75 maintenance call.
Exactly.
Or, hey, I don't want to replace a refrigerator. Just, see if you can put a new fuse in there. If you're cutting corners on that, you have the wrong mindset. You don't have the, 30-year mindset on owning the property. So how do you kind of gauge that with the property manager? I mean, it sounds like she's doing that. And how do you manage that process? Is it like a monthly thing? She just kind of reports to you because you've built that trust now, or how does that go?
Yeah, she uses a property management software that we have ownership portal logins to, so we can always go jump through and look at owner statements and rent and maintenance requests. And again, she does all the financials. So I just get a direct deposit from her company once a month on the 15th or 16th of every month. I try to have a call with her once a quarter just to play catch up. But I'm of the belief that it's worth going in this case, not paying extra, but again, she needs to pay more. But in my opinion, it's worth going and finding somebody who's just really good at their expertise, and then just kind of backing off and letting them, let them run it. Like, she manages, I think it's roughly the same. I want to say it's like 350, 400 doors just here, predominantly in Johnson County, but throughout Kansas City. And I mean, she's good at her job. She's very good at her job. So it's like, just let her do her job. Don't get in the way. And let her do her process and let her use her vendors. The couple tips we got into was, obviously I own a construction company, which we also have an HVAC, plumbing, and electrical division. And so I learned that lesson hard. She was like, hey, the air conditioner's out in one of these properties. My guy has a quote to replace. I was like, whoa. I'll just send my guys over. Right. And if I'm being honest, the guys that she hired did it for almost the exact price that I could do it at a break even. And again, I was just like, Steven, you hired her for a reason. Just let her do her thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, property managers are worth their weight in gold, the good ones.
That's true. Unfortunately, they're a lot like, attorneys or real estate agents. Like, only 1% of them are worth what you're paying them to do. And it's really hard to find one that's, that you have that relationship with. So,
for sure.
So talk me through that. I know you're pay taxes on your earnings now, but do you take advantage of like refinancing your portfolio, pulling cash out? Like, how do you manage that portfolio? Are you just like, hey, let's just ride it until these are all paid off?
Yeah. So a couple ways, a couple finance points there. So one is when we buy a new flip, we'll construction finance them. So we always try to find a property that needs work because the loan terms are more lucrative. Plus we have the construction capability. So it's a no-brainer for us. But we can get them on pretty lucrative financing terms out of the gate, where the bank will fund the majority of the construction. And, I'll be 5, 10, 15% down of the total value once completed. Mm-hmm. But then from there, I refinanced a bunch of them in 2021, 2022. I mean, we were getting commercial rates, around 5.5. So it's like a no-brainer. We cashed out a few of them and refied. So there's several properties that I'm sitting in for zero of my own dollars. And in fact, the cash on cash return is essentially an infinite amount because I'm $0 cash into some of these. So, but I just try to play the market a little bit. Like I try not to cash out refi because you're kind of just hitting the reset button. But it depends on what the cash out refi is for. If you take the cash out refi and you take that cash and then go buy another asset, maybe it's worth it. Maybe it's not. If you go out and buy a Corvette with it, probably a bonehead move.
Yeah, unless that Corvette's making you money, it's definitely
exactly true.
Yeah. So I love that. And what a lot of people don't understand too, it takes a long time to get to, you said what, 300 350 doors that you guys own right now.
That's what the manager has. I don't have that many. I'm only about 24, 25.
Okay. Well, even then, so you're like on your way where you've passed the, point of no return where you can't get conventional, FHA financing anymore. Right. So a lot of people don't know that. That's something to explain. So including your primary residence, you can only have 10 FHA loans in your name, which is great. And I would encourage anybody to max that out. Then once you max that out, you can max that out for your, yourself and your spouse. You guys can have those in separate lines as long as you guys aren't co-signers on each other's loans. Then you get into commercial financing, and those financing terms are the most volatile, right? They react the most to bond rates. They react the most to markets. They react the most to, the Fed funds rate. And so what does that look like for you guys now? How is, commercial financing kind of shaped your strategy, and how you're going about those refinances? You said you refied at 5% a few years ago. Now commercial rates, you're at, 7.5% to 8.5% on a 30-year, for instance. Mm-hmm. So how does that change your strategy here?
Yeah, I mean, on a lot of those now, I'm understanding that we're not going to get those mid 5 rates on the commercial side, in my opinion, anytime, this year or, potentially next year or whatever. I don't have a crystal ball, but all of those that got refinanced into the 5s, I'm kind of like set it and forget it. We did most of them at 30 years. And again, some of them I pulled my cash out of them. So now I'm playing with house money. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it's just set it and forget it.
So are you not, flipping and holding rental property anymore? Have you kind of paused on that, like in today's market?
Yeah. So over the last few years, when we've really dove into renovating KC, this has been our primary. So yeah, our flip volume we went about 18 months, almost 2 years without flipping anything. My brother and I acquired in that time period, I think 2 additional rental properties that were more turnkey. But now now that the craze is, in my opinion, here in Kansas City, at least starting to see the downside where all the HGTV DIY flippers are starting to go away. I'm able to find new, off-market deals that start to make sense again. So we've got a handful of deals on the forecast for the remainder of this year that I'm pretty excited about.
Isn't that funny how that works? And not to overly compliment you, but like one thing that drew me to you and your company and like what you've been doing and you're starting to build on. We'll get into that in a little bit more in a second. But like, there's so many people on, Instagram or HGTV or YouTube or whatever that are selling these like huge dreams on, hey, this is how you get rich in real estate. You can retire young. You can do all this, but at the end of the day, all they're trying to sell you is an education package, right? Like buy my course, it's $40,000, whatever. Right. I've never sold an education course. From what I know, you guys don't sell anything,
no.
As far as that goes. And you and I are the guys that are like actually in the business of like, hey, we're buying land, we're developing land, we're building property, we're renovating, we're flipping. It's not some can of goods that we're just trying to get somebody to spend on a credit card to learn how to do something that, listening to a podcast like this, you should be able to figure out for yourself and get some guidance. So
exactly. Yeah. I mean, I get targeted pretty heavily because of our real estate business, all the coaching and the BS programs and all that. I get targeted on those. And then for our general contracting business, that's like the new wave right now. Everyone's identified that trades workers or trades people is on the decline. So all these larger hedge funds, people with endless amount of money are starting to acquire a lot of these home service companies, these general contracting firms, because they kind of see the writing on the wall of what's going to happen over the next few decades. Mm-hmm. So with that attention to this industry becomes all of these people now trying to sell these plans and these programs. I interviewed I was honestly looking for some coaching this last winter in the general contracting space. So I started just down that rabbit hole of Googling all these trainers and these construction gurus. And I don't know, I interviewed maybe 12, 13 of them, and 12 and a half of them were total garbage. The one guy maybe was like half worth a grain of salt, but it's just trash, man. And they charge $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 a month. And the real estate gurus are the same way. And the way that I present it is like, we're out doing the non-sexy version of what they're trying to sell. We just do it.
Yep. And I think the other thing too is like, the reason I started this podcast, I mean, just to back all the way up, I called it Anyone Have a Pencil because I was always the kid in class that never had any stationery. So I was always asking someone near, like I'd just show up to school unprepared all the time, like, elementary school, middle school. I'm like, hey, can I borrow a pencil? Does anyone have a sheet of paper? And that like transformed my life when I finally got that together and was like surrounding myself with smarter people than me, which wasn't hard to do at the time. And really just like sitting back and listening, not being the one trying to coach or teach or do any of those things, and really learn. And so I think that's one aspect of it that I really wanted to get across through this podcast was like, learn from all the mistakes that I've made. Guys like you who have battle scars from being in this business for a long period of time, they're actually doing it and still doing it, not jumping in, at 2.5% interest rate. Like anybody could have sold a house in, 2020 and made money
right
at that point. But who's still around? Who still has those battle scars? And listening to that, and I guarantee you could listen to 10,000 hours of me and Steven talking. You're still going to make a mistake when you go out there and try to do it for yourself. And so the difference is, do you have the, stamina to do it, even if you have failures in the short term, and to push yourself for the next, 10 to 20 years, not just, I tried it once, it didn't work out. I paid $40,000 for this education course. Now what do I do? So the only real teacher is experience.
Yeah, I was the same way. I mean, I was by far and above not labeled as a good student in school. We were actually a team of the guys here at the office were joking about our ACT scores the other day. And I had the lowest one of everybody in the conversation here.
Yeah.
And, I was always a big believer, and my parents taught me this. I was always just a big believer of like, you just have to try it and figure it out on your own. I'm not a manual reader. When I buy a Traeger grill, like I'm not reading the manual on how to put it together. I'll just figure it out. And in some instances in life, that does me a huge disservice. But in the macro of me doing that for 35 years, a lot of times I come out ahead.
Yeah.
And it's just, you can't be, if you just want to sit on the sidelines and just research, because I know so many people, there's so many people like that in Kansas City, and they'll call me once a month, once every, a couple times a year, and they're like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? I'm like, man, you're still talking about buying your first property. Right. It's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. In my business, we call that paralysis of analysis.
Yeah.
It's like, you're just going to sit there and think and overthink and then never actually pull the trigger on anything. And, that's what I try to tell our clients too, and our investors is like, one, set realistic expectations for what their returns are. And hopefully we exceed that. And, 9 times out of 10, they're exceeded. And 100 times out of 10, they're exceeded over the right time frame, right? So it might not be in year 1, but it's in year 3, whatever.
Yeah.
But the real risk is like not owning real estate now. It's like you were saying earlier, like taxes are only going up, right? Pricing is only going up. Everyone thinks that, something's going to save them to the point where real estate prices drop or there's like a big market crash. I'm not seeing it. I mean, are you seeing that? And like, it's not 2008. And even at the current interest rates, I'm seeing pricing continue to rise.
Yeah, we're seeing the same thing here. I mean, I use Johnson County as our example. It's kind of labeled as the Johnson County bubble here in the Kansas City metro because it's the most stable economy, if you will, in Kansas City. But I agree. I had a conversation with a gentleman last week, and he goes, I'm just going to wait until the slow season this winter to buy a property. And I kind of jokingly referenced several deals that we looked at last winter, and they were better deals than they sit as today. So it's like, it's going to be the same next winter. Like there is no slow season for what you're trying to buy. You're trying to buy the most highly sought after demographic of home in this bubble in the metro. Like you and everybody else are trying to buy the same thing.
Yeah.
So you just gotta, eventually you have to pull the trigger. And, we look back at a property that he passed on about a year ago, and he would have already been just such a good equity position had he pulled the trigger on it. It's like, man, you just got to go. Yeah.
My favorite saying of that, it's like an old Chinese proverb of best time to plant a tree was a year ago. The second best time's today.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that couldn't be more accurate to real estate.
Oh, 100%.
The reason I introduced you to is like we were having kids at the same time, and I'm not sure, what your experience was. I think we've talked about this before, but like having my first kid put all of my ambition and focus and drive, like literally into, I don't know, if there's an 8th gear in a car, I would have been in it. Like, can you talk a little bit about that and just like how starting a family and becoming a dad? Because it sounds like those are kind of like coinciding for you. You went from doing this thing with your brother and now, going into everything else you have going on now. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, we had our first kiddo, Palmer. She's now 5. She was born in 2019. And I was thinking in my head that would be the best way to describe it, as far as just like kicking your overall entrepreneurship, motivation, determination into some sort of an overdrive gear is definitely the best way to describe it. Kelsey and I had talked about having kids for a few years. We got married in 2015. So it's like for those few years, we always knew we wanted to have kids. And so mentally, I had started to process what it would look like to have kids. But as soon as that first kiddo arrived, it was just like, holy smokes, this is different. The best way I can describe it is it was officially no longer about me and Kelsey.
Yep.
We almost turned irrelevant overnight. And everything that we do now from a business perspective, a personal perspective, a health perspective is all through the lens of how is this going to impact the 3 kids that we have today? So and if it doesn't, it all goes through that.
So what do you think that connection is? Because, a lot of times, and before I had, before I met Tracy, and even probably while I was dating Tracy and before we had kids, I mean, I would consider myself like extremely selfish. And I thought that, my drive to succeed and create business and all of that was selfish too. And it is in a certain aspect of it. There's a piece of it that is self-serving, right? Like you have that innate like internal motor that you need to satisfy. But it wasn't until I became completely selfless with those kids that everything else started clicking and coming together. Like what do you think that is?
For me, it's a faith thing. I think it's just a God-given attribute to a man, in my opinion. And I think it's how he made us and how we were physically hardwired to react in these situations. And I think that's why when you give a man a child and him and his wife have a kid, it's just like your brain is just hardwired to start changing. And this is just for me, this is how I think. But I think we are just hardwired. If you would listen to it, some people are like not listening to it and they just want to continue to do their own thing, or they're just being selfish about it. They're not paying attention to their kids or whatever, or put them on an iPad all day and that's it. If you listen to how your brain is hardwired, for me, that's what changed, and now they're just, if you just look at it through that lens, it makes a world of a difference.
I think that's beautifully said, man. I think, the trap there is that you look at getting married and having kids as a distraction or something that's going to get in your way. Mm-hmm. And I think from Steven's experience, what he's saying, and from my experience too, like that couldn't be the furthest from the truth. Like if you really lean into that, and I think my pastor said this to me a couple months ago. He said, what do you have that you haven't been given by God? Like if you really strip everything away, what do you think you're responsible for? You know?
Yeah, that's great.
So like let go of some of that, and give it to God and lean into your family. And, you know, the experience of being a father is so, I don't even know. It just shakes everything up in your life to put things in real perspective. And I think that makes you a better leader, definitely makes you a better man. And I think it gives you a better perspective on, you know, your work, and the people you surround, the people you surround yourself through your work and how you treat people. And then that it's almost just like this conglomerate of, you know, your mindset shifting, like you were saying, all at the same time to provide you, you know, a higher ability really of how you operate as a person.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, if you just go against what the mainstream media says, you're probably doing pretty good, right? Like for me, you know, for me, it's about, and take this at face value. I don't mean this like in a very literal sense, but like I wear a bracelet that says nobody cares, work harder. It's a Cameron Haynes thing, right? And for me, that's how I see myself in the hierarchy of our family, right? The kids are most important. Kids and Kelsey are most important. And then I'm just there. Yep. And I don't mean that nobody cares about what I'm doing, because that's not the case. But what I'm saying is, if you can look through the lens that their well-being, their future, they are just primary and you are secondary. And if you can think of that in a faith-based way, to where, you know, what God does in your life and then what he does in your kid's life, and then you are last, you know. Yeah. And that's how I try to think of myself when times get tough, or we have long days, or it's hot out, or kids are crying, or whatever. It just, nobody cares for you. Like, and be a man and figure it out is where I'm at right now. Yeah. You know, and the mainstream media will tell you it's okay to be, you know, you should have your own alone time. You should have this, that, and the other. I'm like, you know what, man, like just figure it out. Just be a man and figure it out. Yeah. That's where I sit.
Yeah. And the funny thing about that too, I mean, that was a huge learning curve for me. I mean, I think I'm probably as, you know, self-centered and egotistical as it can get. And that's something I've had to work on, you know, for a long time. And being married to my wife definitely helped adjust that, because, you know, now you're in a relationship, like you have to make that relationship work to have, a happy household and like a successful life. But the thing that I found is, like, the more that I lean into what you just said of like, no one cares, like put everybody else first, make sure they're taken care of. They treat you the same way. Like your wife thinks that about you. Your wife thinks, I got to put Steven first.
For sure.
And it's reciprocal. Whereas
exactly.
Everyone's trying to go their own way. You know, how do you get around that? So.
Right. Yeah. And we kind of took that core, like it's a buzzword, right? To have, you know, here at Renovating KC, there's 20 people that work here. There's 3 owners and 17 employees. So that's, if we were to add up all the kids and everybody whose livelihood is affected by this company, like it would be probably north of 100, 110 people. Right. And for us, like, it's a big buzzword in business for, do you have family culture and this, that, and the other. But, you know, we truly tried to do that here, where, you know, the ownership has taken, you know, no payout for a month or longer to make sure that everybody else's needs got met first. And if you look at an organizational chart of a company, right, the owners sit at the top. And again, a buzzword to say that's not how it really works on a daily basis, right? Like, I'm here and the other 2 owners of Renovating KC are here to serve everybody else.
Yep.
And our needs are going to get met last. We are in this for the long haul, for the 10, 15 year realm, where these employees hopefully are as well, but their needs have to get met now. And that's how you create this culture around family, and, you know, that you actually do care about your employees versus just taking all the profit and running, and they'll figure it out. And there's no PTO, and there's no sick days, and there's no this, that, and the other. I mean, talk about killing a company culture.
No kidding. And I think that's, that's like the grimy part of being a business owner and a leader too, is like everyone thinks that it's so sexy to be self-employed or own your own business until you got to do it. And what they don't, and I think part of the reason that so many businesses fail is that they don't understand the concept of in order for this to succeed, you have to eat last as the owner, as the leader. You have to be the leader of the tribe, that when, you go out and, hunt and bring home, you're bringing it home for the village. And it's so everybody else can eat first. And that's the purpose for your existence.
Yeah.
And then it's to guide them, to higher profitability and to, have a vision. But if they're not eating, if they're not happy, dude, you're just on an island by yourself, and good luck with that. And a lot of times that takes, for lack of a better word, like you're going to eat shit for a long time.
Yeah. No question.
Yep.
Yeah. I think, you couldn't have hit that any better. I think, a lot of business owners do struggle with that. I think they want to be fed now. I think they're potentially getting into business for the wrong reasons. Some people, unfortunately now, and this isn't to dog on everybody, but some people get into business now for the vanity of being a business owner, and they think it's really cool. And you can post on Instagram that you own a business, and I just launched this LLC and this, that, and the other, and all of this sexy stuff sounds really great. But we've had days and weeks and months where we've left the office here, and it's just like, are we just banging our heads against the wall? Like, what are we doing here? And then the month after that, we'll just crush it. And it's like, this is what we're doing here. And you can see the joy in some of the people that work here and how excited they get if our sales guy goes out and sells $1 million renovation job. And then on our construction side, they finish a job and we get a customer testimonial that's just over the moon on how much praise they're like. That's why we're here. Right. Yeah. Yep. But it's not always fun. That's for sure.
Yeah. And that's, man, you and I should write a book about the struggles of ownership. But yeah, the need for immediate gratification in this society of like, why would you even brag that you're self-employed and that you set up an LLC before you've accomplished anything? Like you're right. Oddly enough, we're talking about self-aggrandizing stuff, but I posted a quote on my Instagram today of like, the people that really win are the ones looking at the whole field, not the ones looking at the scoreboard. And if you're somebody that's like posting, like, look at me, I set up the LLC, I'm self-employed, I'm a business owner, and you're not looking at like, well, what's my profitability look like? What's the strength in all the positions I need to fill for this company? Like, if that's not your primary focus, and your primary focus is just to like, say that you're the owner of something, dude, you're a dime a dozen. Yeah. You're going to be gone.
Yeah. And it's funny to talk so much trash on that, because at the beginning, we all did a version of that.
100%.
Yep. We were, dude, I just started this new business. It's going to be great. We're doing so well. We've not collected $1 of sales yet, but we're just crushing it. Yep. And, that's why it's fun to kind of sit back and talk trash on it. And so it's like, you hope that people, because I'm in the same realm as you, like you said earlier, trying to find a room of people who are smarter than you. Like, I'm still trying to find those rooms consistently. Yep. And now we've found ourselves in the position where maybe there is somebody who is on their brand new journey of business ownership that it's like, hey, come sit at my table and I'll gladly share what I can. I don't have all the answers by any means. I can tell you what I did right and what I did wrong and how I would do it again. That's all I can give you. Yep. But you got to find those. You got to seek those things out.
Absolutely, man. And that switch didn't happen for me. I've been rich twice, and the first time I lost everything. And not only did I lose it, but I was, probably $800,000 in debt after it all went away. And the primary catalyst for that was, in real estate, I think one of the biggest the things that you can get caught up in is like I was saying earlier, we kind of discussed, but like, hey, here's my return on this project. And then you make a lot of money off of a couple of deals, but like every deal that I was doing was paying for my lifestyle. And so there always had to be a next deal.
Yeah.
Right. I wasn't investing that money. I wasn't smart at all with my taxes. I mean, I was 26, 27 years old. And I was like, I didn't even know that I was supposed to like hire a bookkeeper.
Yeah.
I was doing my own taxes and I was making like, millions of dollars a year. Right. So, I lose everything. And then when I start back over, my focus of that was like, I need to build, what the Bible says too, of like, you build your home on a solid foundation. So everything I did was to build the solid foundation first, so that it could grow from that. And then I could reinvest my money in longer term benefits. And the difference is that it took me 5 years of doing that to actually really reap the rewards of it. It wasn't so overnight, like, oh yeah, I made $1 million this year. No, it's like I'm making nothing so that I can build that thing for the future.
Yeah.
But that's the mindset trick.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We have this analogy that I use quite often here around our office, which is we're kind of building this machine, right? So we're in the home service vertical with more a niche of general contracting and remodeling, design, remodeling. But we also have the home service company for HVAC, plumbing, electrical. But anyway, where I'm getting at is I consistently reference this machine. And that's all that we're building here. We're just building this hopefully well-oiled machine that can run and operate in any vertical that we wanted to within our, overarching category here of home service. And if we want to get into roofing or garage door repair or whatever other vertical we want to get into in the residential home service space, the machine has been built. So how can you expect the machine to run for a very long time if you're extracting every ounce of extra out of it within the first year or 2 years or 3 years or whatever? Like the machine needs to be continued to be tinkered on, which takes resources and time and money. And you can't just suck everything out of it and expect it to run for 15 years.
Absolutely. So talk a little bit about that. So, we kind of skipped over that, but, you've had kind of an interesting journey, as a home inspector, real estate agent, flipping homes with your brother. And now, from what I can tell and like looking at what Renovation KC is, you guys are doing some beautiful renovations. It's like very, I would say, B+ to A+. It's not, not in your, home flipping neighborhoods. So How do you get into that? What drives that and how's that going? And what's the future look like for that?
Yeah, great question. It's pretty fun. We started renovating KC with $300, right? The three of us owners each put in $100 and that's how we got started. We eventually secured a line of credit to pour some gasoline on the fire, but that's my story about how we got started. The third owner, Chris, he owned a small general contracting firm for about 11, 12 years. So he wasn't new to this idea, and neither were we with being able to flip homes and sell them. We had so many people asking us on our flipped houses, like, hey, I own a home. I'm not selling or buying it, but you guys did a great job on this renovation. Can you just come do my house? And we're like, we're not really set up to do that. Finally, COVID hit and I was like, guys, this is it. Like, this is the time. Everyone's going to start working from home. We have kind of the very basic infrastructure to get this started. Like, let's just get started. So actually 2022 was our first full year in business. So we're still only on our third year in business, but 2022, we grew from zero to $3 million. We grew from basically 2 employees to, I think we finished the year at 7 or 8. And now we're up to almost, I said again, 20 people that work here.
Yeah.
And at any given time, we have 30-ish projects in motion, in progress. So they might be in the design phase and pre-construction. They might be in construction, or they might be in final post-substantial completion, like a punch list phase. We do some really cool stuff. Everyone here is really talented. Everybody from the design staff to the operations and estimating staff through construction. So, we'll do, on the very low end, we'll do $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, bathroom refreshes or something like that. But our bread and butter is the $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, main floor remodel where we're re-engineering the structure of the home and opening up the kitchens and creating these really incredible spaces. Additions has been a big thing, and this is all predicated on the real estate market. So not everybody, our target demographic went out and bought a starter home. Well, rates went through the roof. They started having kids. They have two options. They can either wear it and go get a huge rate increase on their next home, or they can add an addition to the current home.
Yeah.
And if they were on top of the ball, likely a lot of our customers pulled out home equity line of credits in 2020, 2021, 2022. So it makes more sense to actually use that line of credit, hire a company like ours to build an addition or completely revamp the space that they're in. Now they don't have to move into that second house.
Yeah.
Most of these homes are in good quality spots, neighborhoods here in Johnson County. So they're not going to outbuild the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. So that's awesome. That's crazy. Cause I was just going to ask you, like, where we are in Texas, you don't see a lot of that, just because in West Texas specifically, I mean, there's just so much population growth here, in that everybody wants a new construction home. And there's so much room for outward expansion from the city center that, land's cheap enough, just build the home, blah, blah, blah. But where you are, and in Kansas City, I mean, all of that's been an established city for 150 years. There's not a lot of land available. You're buying older homes anyway, right? I mean, in these nice neighborhoods, there's not a lot of like new construction in these what's that, like Oak Park and some of those nicer areas.
Yeah. I mean, Johnson County as a whole will range from homes built like the very oldest, maybe in the 40s or 50s, and then there's still some parts of Johnson County which do have new development, but you're starting to get what used to be very far out there and now is seemingly not so far out there anymore. But yeah, I mean, our target demographic, these homes were built in the 70s, 80s, 90s, maybe early 2000s.
Okay. And so what are you seeing? So when people are doing like an addition, is it because their family's growing? Like a lot of times it's personal reasons, where they don't want to go from that starter home to the family home because it doesn't make financial sense, or they bought a starter home that would work for 5 years. 5 years runs up. They've planted such deep roots in the neighborhoods that they just don't want to leave the neighborhood. So they're like, well, how do I solve my problem? I now have 2 more kids than I had 5 years ago. What do I do now? So like we just did that example. We built a 2,500 square foot addition on this person's house. So it's a whole new house.
Exactly. And
500 square foot addition is you built another house for them on their property.
It's pretty wild. And and they're not upside down in the house, because that's the approach that we take is I can truly go speak to the value of these homes with my realtor background and my home inspection background. I can go and say, hey guys, I'll pull 3 or 4 comps that are trading right now in your neighborhood on what we think we're going to build. And our goal is to not have our customers spend their money poorly. Like if they want to buy a gold plated toilet imported from Italy, that's on them. But for us, it's like, here's what we recommend based off, that's what really sets us apart, is we will take the consultative approach from a real estate DNA background to get them to renovate their house correctly. Worst case scenario for me is a customer calls me in 3 years and says, hey, why'd you let me do this dumb $100,000 remodel my house? I can't get my money back out of it.
Right.
That is like worst case scenario for me.
Yeah. And you're not going to get any more business from them.
Exactly.
Right. And so, I mean, I love that approach. And I think that, with all the automation and all of the, customer service being overseas and, the service industry in general, I think is like in the toilet. Just nobody has like a service minded attitude anymore. Mm-hmm. But man, if you treat the customer and really get to understand them and what their goals are, I mean, I think that's like an untapped market, an untapped skill set these days. Like nobody has that approach. It's just about like, volume and just, this is one size fits all for everybody. I love that you guys take the time to do that, understand what their goals are. Really that addition's going to be in their life for the next, 10 years. Right. Mm-hmm. So helping them think through that stuff. So talk to me a little bit about that, because I've made some really bad mistakes, flipping my own homes or doing additions to my houses, which, I felt like I needed, but didn't really, add value to that. What are kind of some best practices for like what adds the most value? And like be as specific as possible. Like, I know kitchens, bathrooms, number of bedrooms, stuff like that, but like what specifically about those areas of the house that add the most value?
A lot of it's becoming solving the functionality problem, right? So yes, you're right. The kitchens, the master bathrooms, the outdoor living spaces, like those are the huge buzzwords for what makes the biggest ROI. But if a kitchen remodel is done without functionality in mind, nobody really paid attention to that. And then they just wondered why they couldn't sell their house when it went to market. They're like, I've got a brand new kitchen. It should be selling. But they didn't hire a design build firm that that took functionality into place. So while they might have really pretty stuff, it doesn't function well. And when I mean by that is like our target demographic here in Johnson County is typically 30s and 40s is the husband and wife, and they generally have kids like single digits, teenagers, whatever, or through high school. Like if a home isn't designed and engineered and built functionally for that single family home, for that family, then it will struggle. And so we do a lot of functionality problem solving. That's what our design team does great. It's all done on the computer. We do 3D renderings. We do 2D layouts. I mean, we're really like studying these homes before we're recommending our layout changes or whatever. We have a home right now, an older couple. They want to be able to age in place. They just bought a reverse ranch. So all the living is on mainly the first floor with a little bit of living in the basement. And they bought it right. It's in a neighborhood where the demographic is older. So now they're saying, Steven, I want to age in place in this home. Please design this home for me as most functionality as possible for what we are trying to do. Great. Like that's where our team really thrives. And like we're going to think through some ADA requirements. We're going to think through what a wheelchair might look like in a few years. Like we're going to start thinking through and studying this home that will actually work for them. And because they bought correctly, they're in a neighborhood that supports these things. Yeah. If they bought a home in a first-time homebuyers neighborhood, I would be recommending against this. I would say you need to get a different realtor and you should have bought in a different part of town. Yeah. But it's all about functionality is the biggest ROI.
And that's really a byproduct of like where you're locating sinks and, maybe a butler's pantry, additional refrigeration, like how you're relaying out the kitchen.
Exactly. Like mud rooms, boot bench areas is big right now. It's been around for a few, several years now, but the functionality between how, here in Kansas City, how the garage space meets the entry, meets the mudroom and boot bench area, and how that meets the kitchen. Like that's a huge traffic flow that has historically been ignored. And if you can get that section of the house to function really nicely, it makes a huge difference. And then the other thing, obviously post-COVID now, exterior spaces are huge. So we're doing a lot of oversized, really large decks, screened in porches, projects like that, because people want to be outside because they are, again, our target demographic. They're likely working from home in one of their bedrooms all day.
Yeah.
So when they're done at work for the day, they want to go outside or they want to go hang out in their basement. They might not even want to go to the kitchen. They want to go see something else.
Yeah. They want to feel like they're not living in their office.
Exactly.
Which can happen quickly.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, one last thing before we let you go, because I could sit here and talk to you all day and I really appreciate your time. So we'll have to do this.
We'll have to do this again.
Times. But if there was one piece of advice that you would give somebody looking for like a, higher end renovation, where would you have them start?
They need to hire a design build firm, in my opinion. Design build is not brand new. We are not the first ones to do it by any stretch of the imagination, but it's becoming more and more popular. And if you can hire a firm that is going to take the design and functionality of the space and get you through construction, to me, that's the most important. I can certainly tell as a home inspector, if I go inspect a home Did they hire a design build firm, or did they hire just a construction company to come in and do it themselves? There's a huge difference. And to the average,
what is that different? Like the fact that it's vertically integrated, I think, is the thing that you're telling me is setting everything apart, right? You're doing the design and you're doing all the work under the same roof, right? By the firm you hire. Why is that so important?
You can tell when people try to piecemeal the trades together. So a lot of people forget, like, oh, I'm going to hire a framing contractor, then I'm going to hire an electrician, then a plumber, then an HVAC company, then an insulation firm, and then drywall. They're just like, I'll just hire those out myself. Mm-hmm. If I could show you the task lists and the punch lists that have to happen in between each of those trades, right, people would just be like, what do you mean there's 80 things that have to happen in between MEPs to get to drywall?
Right.
And somebody's got to tie all those things together. And that's what I'm saying. If I go do a home inspection, I can tell that either the homeowner tried to sub it out themselves and GC it themselves, because the in between, the tasks, the small punch list items got missed. Yep. And it's evident as all get out. And it goes to where, like, they might have spent $150 square foot on quartz, but they didn't prep the cabinets right. They didn't put in the correct supports for the countertops. And next thing you know, you got this $8,000 countertop that's getting ready to fall over because they didn't coordinate correctly with the cabinet company.
Yeah. Or you spend, $80,000 on new cabinets for a kitchen, and then you don't coordinate it with your trim and paint guys the right way. I mean, things can fall apart quickly, especially, I couldn't agree more. I think that's great advice, is to start with a design build company. So where can people reach you? And, do you have any, I think you have a website. It's like RenoKC.
Yeah, RenoKC.com is our design build website. We're really active on Instagram. The Renovating KC Instagram page is where we spend most of our time. We try to do a lot of not only before and after photos and videos. We'll do behind the scenes stuff. We try to shoot some office content, and we just try to get people to learn and understand who we are, what our background is, because installing tile once you get to the design build level. So for us, it's now about here's why we're the experts. Here's our background and here's our personality. And that goes a long way. I mean, we've spent almost zero money on marketing over the course of almost 30 months.
I love that.
So
awesome, man. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time. I'll get your links and post them on the YouTube channel and also on Instagram. But Steven, man, I really appreciate your time. Thank you. And we'll definitely have to have you on again.
Yeah, let's do it. Let me know next time you're in KC.
All right, brother. Talk to you soon.
All right, man. See ya.